Hey, Steve. Is Mike your dad?
Yes. He is indeed. Andy, how do you know him? Hey, sorry about that. Mike is my dad, Andy.
Oh my God, Jaden with a knife. That's terrifying. Put it away.
Yeah, that's Jaden's every day. I got a couple other. Where's all the children? Say hello.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for waiting those incredibly long 3 minutes with us. Feels like it gets longer every meeting. It's really good to see you. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a call, even though it's just been a week. But welcome. I just wanted to open up and give a special welcome to one of our brand new agents, Andy Porter. Andy joins us from the restaurant industry, and y'all are seriously gonna love him. He's yeah, so fun to get to know. I can't wait till y'all can meet him in person. So Andy, do you want to open up and say anything? I'm really putting you on the spot. Just feel like you're really good at last minute speaking.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Just hi everybody, how we doing? I couldn't figure out how to hear anybody for a second. I guess it was attached to my Bluetooth speakers. But anyway, yeah, I'm super excited to join the team. I've been very busy the last couple of days, just kind of getting stuff ready, and I'm meeting with Jess on here, I think on Friday at 11. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I've spent about 22 years in restaurants, and it was definitely time to make a change. And yeah, so I'm stoked. But thanks for putting me on the spot, Rosie. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Andy. Another new agent that we have is Lance McElfresh. I don't know if he's at the same point in the screen for everyone else, so he's right there on mine. So Lance, welcome. Lance is also a joy. Just all of the people we've added this month that just are so smiley and amazing. So Lance, I'm not going to put you on spot because I feel like an asshole for doing that to Andy, but welcome. We're glad to have you. Rex, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're on mute.
Yep, there we go. You would think I would be getting used to this by now. I'm learning slow. So hi everybody. It's good to see you guys. Wanted to touch base real quickly on some things that we are well, one, something we've accomplished as a brokerage year to date, and then a couple other pieces that we're observing in the market. So as of yesterday, Plat Collective for the first time ever moved into the number 3 spot in for Indianapolis as far as the brokerage rankings. So that feels pretty good. Super excited about that. What's really neat is the bulk of that growth is actually coming from a pretty wide distribution of individual agent growth. So you all are growing your individual businesses over last year. It's growing at a pretty amazing pace. So this time last year, our brokerage within Indianapolis had transacted about $71 million in residential or total real estate, across 353 transactions. So that was for 19. For 20 over the same period, 92 million, over 92 million, or sorry, 92 million for 484 transactions. There is no other brokerage that's seeing that kind of jump in the numbers in the top 10. And from what I have seen within how that's been achieved within other brokerages, there's no brokerage that has more volume growth coming from such a large percentage of the total agent base. So, there isn't like this handful of agents that are just, taking off. Everybody seems to be really, generating a positive, solid growth on average. And so for me to see that, I couldn't be more excited about it, because what it tells me is we've got this great distributed culture of agents that are owning their business and doing the right things day in, day out, so that they can get their business where they want it to be. So congrats, guys. Great job there. I have not found another situation at this level of volume, both in transaction count and dollar volume, where you've had such a high percentage of the agent base making up that growth. So yeah, that's that. To move into that number 3 spot and have the why of that be what it is tremendous. So thanks, guys. Thanks for all you're doing and the way you're doing it in a time that is extremely challenged. I mean, it's hard to get up and go to work right now when every daily social norm we have has basically been blown to confetti over the last 6 months or 2 months. Any questions about that before I hop into the next topic? Nope. Okay. I don't know if you guys have noticed yet or not, but there's not a whole lot of stuff on the market right now. We have an unbelievably small amount of inventory that's out on the market. Last I looked, I think there were like right around 100 multi-units on the market. There's an unbelievably small amount of single family homes up for sale. What we are seeing is some of that is being pushed out into later summer months. So I'm reading tea leaves here a little bit, so I may retract this next month. But I think what we're going to see is a stretch of the buying season where we typically see people go on summer vacation. I think we're going to see more buyer activity, more seller activity in those, mid-June to end of July as the quarantine started, as we get to a greater level of operation. What are we, phase 3, phase 4, phase 5? Somewhere, and when the phases all open up and people like the finish line is near. And for those parents, there has been nothing else. I mean, very, very little margin for much outside of like, how did I become teacher and how do I get through today and next week and on. So we're going to see some margin open up there in homes. Is anybody else feeling that way? I've got a 11-year-old, 8-year-old, and 5-year-old at home. Guys, we are on the threshold of hell. Just so you know. And we just this is our last week right here, and it's feeling pretty good, pretty darn good. So just know that there is a segment of that of our buyer and seller base within our industry that probably over the next 30 days is going to start to have some conversations they have just not even been able to conceptualize for the last 2 months. Any questions there on inventory, what we're seeing, what summer is, looking like, at least from the precursors?
Rex, just asked a question in the chat. 4th of July is typically a pretty slow weekend. Do you think that will be different this year because of the pandemic?
That is a great question. I think it will probably still be a slow weekend, and I think it's going to be a slow weekend because that's when everything's supposed to open up again in the city. Like, there's tremendous pressure to have one giant ass party in Indianapolis in the 4th of July. So I think because of that, that weekend is going to probably be slow from a realty standpoint. But I think then after, it's pretty quickly, we're going to feel the hammer drop and we're going to start to get calls, on, hey, you know what? Fireworks were going off and we started to talk about buying a house, and here we are, it's Tuesday. Can we start looking? I do think you're going to see some ramped up buyer activity. I also think you're going to see some people come out of, look, we've been stuck in this house almost every minute of the last 2 months, and I can't be here anymore. I need a different home. And now I know exactly what I need to never be in this situation again. So I think you're going to still see a slow holiday weekend there, or on par with what we've seen in the past. But I think both, a week or two before that, and definitely very closely following, it's very likely we see inventory and buyers and sellers really uncork, who've been pent up for quite a while. Any other questions? Let's see. Okay, good. Because we are that's right, Rosie. We are partying.
Do you think we're going to see these changes in specific price points? Or do you think it'll be across the board?
I think you're going, I think the, 400 and up range is going to be, is going to not quite have as big of a reaction. Typically what we see, the real question is, right, within that market, let's say, 400,000 up to 700,000. Typically that market, you get into July and it gets real quiet, right? Comparative to before. And then, we might see a little blip in the fall and then it starts all over. So I think compared to that, 200 to 400,000 range, you're going to see a, not quite the swell of buyer activity and probably some seller activity too. I think that is a market that doesn't necessarily always have a real hard time saying, you know what, we're just going to get through this year and we'll talk again about this, in 2021. But I do think that kind of buyer wave that typically calms down in July, start of July, very likely that extends several weeks, just because I think there are some people who are going to say, we have to get this done before school starts, and so, that's really a, kind of a mixed answer to your question. And the reality, I think, is we're going to have a segment of that 400,000 plus range that just holds off because they can. And it wasn't it's not an urgent, we need to find a place. And then you're going to have this other contingent that sees this very short window of, all right, everything's open back up again and school starts here and we have to move quick, who are going to do similar. I wouldn't be surprised to see some people list those homes in the 400 plus, 1,000 range. We're going on vacation. We want this to go under contract while we're out of town for this next week, price it appropriately. And, let's have people through our home when we're not there. And then we're going to, we'll get it, cleaned up. And I mean, speculatively here, I wouldn't be surprised to see some people just try it for a week and say, look, we're going to throw this up to list for a week to two. If it goes while we're gone, great. If it doesn't, we'll just stay here. And nobody kind of wants to go through that rodeo as an agent. But I could definitely see those requests coming in.
Mark, are you seeing, or Rex, are you seeing an increase in inventory or an increase in buyers? And if it's inventory, do you see it coming from people that are too cramped or foreclosures or landlords? What's your thought there?
Really good question. I think you're going to have a mix. I know you're going to see some inventory come up on the back half of the year from landlords, investors, Airbnb owners who just don't have the liquidity. The PPPs run out. The thought of making, loan payments with no, or substantially reduced income coming in is just not an option. They're going to have, a need for a liquidity event. So I know you're going to have that. You will have some inventory, I'm sure, that comes in the form of, short sale and foreclosure. How much? I don't necessarily know, can't necessarily speak to that. I think the real question is, we're supposed to have this second wave of PPP coming out. Some need for liquidity events across a number of the markets that we serve, be that owner occupant, investor, Airbnb, long-term rental, land, commercial. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, and it's going to be really critical that we have our ear to the ground on where that value is. And also, if we have clients, if we can help a client save a foreclosure or a short sale by
I was late. Yeah, I would echo the different types of inventory are going to react differently, right? To your point about the mixture, phenomenally rare combination of record unemployment and super low inventory and raising prices. So trying to figure out what's going to happen in the future feels a little bit strange because inventory keeps going down, prices keep going up. Rex probably said this, but I think we're going to set another record in Central Indiana in May. I hope inventory goes up. Like, I hope we see, I'm not rooting for any, class of demographic of homeowner to experience the financial pressure where they have to sell. That's not good for anybody, but we need more inventory because to have the rising prices that we have, it's not ideal. I mean, it's a good indicator if you own real estate, and it's honestly probably healthy for us as a brokerage, but just in general, the market needs more inventory. So I hope we see some increase in some of those classes. I mean, I looked at the unemployment numbers. I mean, the Indiana's just had a week where there were 10 times the typical unemployment claims in 1 week. So where typically you would have, for every one person that would typically be filing unemployment, last week we had 10 times that number of people. So I don't think that's going to correct really fast, but nobody knows what it's, because we've never had anything like this, right? Like, that's still 5 times the amount of what a week was during the recession in 08 and 9. Like, per week, 5 times the number of claims. So anyway, I think we need more inventory. I'm hoping that that's what happens. Which, we talked about it last week. I think that's the opposite of what most consumers would assume is true right now. I still think most people, if they're not active in the marketplace, would assume bad time to sell, good time to buy. And it is very clearly a good time to sell. It may or may not be a bad time to buy. I think it's certainly a good time to sell. It might be an okay time to buy. That's what I would say. So yeah, Stephen, I hope we see more coming online. You can look at new construction as an indicator of what's inventory going to look like, because you can see permits pulled more in advance of when you would know if a existing homeowner. And I haven't looked in the last 2 weeks. Tatum, you might know this, although you just took your video off. I think permits are still down, right? They're going back up.
We actually had our first positive month.
There we go. Good. So that's normally a good indicator for what inventory is going to do. If you see an increase in new construction permits, then inventory is going to tend to go up. So that was a long answer to follow up on Stephen's question, but
Hey, Mark, this is a newbie question here, but what's the relation between those two, new builds and inventory? Maybe I'm just like asking a very dumb question, but I don't understand the connection.
New builds are dropping a new product, a new supply into the balance between supply and demand. So without new builds, there is a gut renovation would qualify really the same as a new build. But without a new build, you have a set number of homes that could be sold and then a fluctuating number of buyers. New builds add inventory. So let's say, for example, who's the largest home builder in the country right now? I don't know who it is. Let's pick a big one here in Indianapolis. MI Homes. MI builds a lot of houses in Indianapolis. If they build 200 houses in our marketplace in a month, either those houses are going to be inventory that's available for sale, or even if they didn't sell a single, or sorry, if they sold all of them, then that's 200 buyers who probably would have consumed one of the existing inventory houses. So if new homes are being built and the permits are going up, you would tend to see inventory start to creep up because one way or another, they're adding something to what's available. It's like Walmart stocking their shelves, I guess you could say. New construction is like that. I don't think that's a newbie question either.
Yeah, just to add
I'm curious.
to that really quickly on.
Go ahead, Rick. I was going to
just
ask a
add to that
question
really
about
quickly
interest
on
rate in the last couple of days.
Ooh, I'll hold on for that. Ask a question. You get that? Is that the go ahead? Okay.
All right.
Apparently my internet connection is unstable, so hang with me. Can anybody hear me? I don't know. I'm just getting this internet. Okay, you can hear me. Great. Inventory year to date, for the month of May, 19 over 20. The average days on market is down 20% to 33 days for anything that's sold. Currently, for the stuff that is that is pending, or even leased, actually, way down. The number of properties sold last year compared to this year. Last year, year to date, we had almost 2,900 properties sold. This year in May, less than 2,200, which is a staggering reduction in the number of homes sold, with the average price jumping up $12,000 from $227 up to $239. So just a little more insight into what we're seeing as far as inventory, price, and time on market.
I was going to ask about interest rates. What was the last deal that you had a buyer close, or maybe you're on the other side and you saw the interest rate, 30-year fixed? Throw it into the chat. Or maybe it wasn't even your deal and you just know of the last one that closed. What are you seeing right now? 30-year fixed interest rate. Assume 20% down buyer. Yeah. It was not a deal of mine. 2 3/4. Interest rates, I mean, 20% down, 30-year fixed, in the very low threes. I think there's some 15-year fixed right now, or like 10-1 arms at 2.9. And I mean, for those that have been in the industry for 10 years or more, like, we've been spoiled by this. Like, it wasn't that long ago that 6.5% was considered a very good rate, like historically low. And so if interest is half of what is historically a good rate, it is 2 3/4, which is just insane. Rex, you saw one at 2 3/4. I think that's a part of what's adding to this. So think about this for a minute. Not many houses available for sale, and money is really cheap to the buyers. You add those things together, and that prices will just keep going up. And I don't, like we've talked about, I don't think it's like your primary job to, study all this stuff every day. But I think when there is this clear divide, my opinion, anyway, a clear divide between kind of general public perception and what's actually happening in the marketplace, this is a way that you provide a lot of value as an agent, is to say, actually, sellers have a lot of leverage right now because buyers have buying power because interest rates are at 3%, which is nuts. There's not a whole lot available for sale. Yes, record unemployment. Let's see what happens. But as of right now, it's crazy to the seller, crazy favorable to the seller. And I mean, hey, I'm not in the know any more than any of you about interest rates, but it sure looks to me like the federal government is just not going to be willing to let interest rates go up at any noticeable pace. And so then what is it that could ease that balance of inventory? Like, what's going to cause buyers to slow down? Massive unemployment could eventually, or new inventory. So, something else I'd throw in that I think I don't know if this is relevant to our jobs other than maybe just causing us to be grateful. I've had two interesting conversations today. A friend of mine is a realtor in Chicago. I actually saw him today. I caught up with him a little bit. And then I spoke with a guy who is works for Realogy. Realogy is they're actually the largest brokerage in the country. Realogy owns many brand names, franchise brand names that you would recognize. This guy with Realogy is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is really interesting. Chicago essentially shut down for 3 weeks. Their real estate business essentially shut down for 3 weeks. And my friend there, he said, yeah, our contracts are structured so much differently than yours in Indiana. He said, every one of my pendings fell apart. And the purchase agreements are written in such a way that they all fell apart immediately. They're essentially a Chicago, Illinois state contract is much easier to dissolve than an Indiana contract. And so he had to start over with all of his buyers and sellers, which was really interesting. And then in Pennsylvania, I knew this, but I was talking to the guy from Realogy about this today. They got shut down as an industry. They were not deemed essential. And for 30 days, they could not conduct business. No showings, no in-person closings of any kind. And it really messed with their marketplace. They're starting to kind of get back to normal now, but it just, I'm not an expert on which was the right call from a human health perspective, not trying to make a statement on right or wrong, but just in terms of the health of our business. gosh, I think we have a lot to be grateful for in Indiana in terms of what we were able to continue doing. I think a part of that is that we're just not as dense. I mean, Indianapolis has the most dense population in our state, but relative to, say, Philadelphia or Chicago, we're just not nearly as dense of a population. And so I think we were able to continue doing some things that they weren't. And now you see, like, 5 weeks later, like, oh my gosh, that was a big deal. Fun side note, to be grateful to live in Indiana, even though we just missed our best weekend of the year. I know we only have about 10 minutes. I want to transition to talk about office, but I also know I was kind of coming in there in the middle of the conversation about inventory and prices. Anything else there, Rex? I know I feel like I say this at least every other week. If at any point in time you think I could really use some guidance on how to pull numbers, just like I want to be able to use them more frequently in my business, like market trends, hit me up or hit Rex up. We would be happy to. I think there is some personalization to this, right? Like some conversation with you about where you work and what type of data you think would be helpful. I think we could help you figure out, like, oh yeah, you should run this report and really pay attention to that. So let us know. Transitioning to talk about office. Most of you probably saw Rosie send out an email this afternoon. Just trying to keep you in the loop as much as we can because we don't know everything yet. But Marion County, the mayor has just announced actually today that they are going to move forward with the next stage of reopening next week. So as of June 1st, kind of outside of our industry, this is like restaurants can go back to 50% capacity indoors. They're actually doing in Indianapolis, I think places of worship can go back to half capacity. Salons, businesses like that can open back up with restrictions. There hasn't been, at least from what I've looked at, really specific guidance from the city of Indianapolis on office environments. But here's what we know. We are able to open the office next week. We actually are able to open the office this week if we chose to. Just FYI, we're waiting until next week. So we know we can open. At the same time, we know that there continues to be guidance and request that says if you can do something virtually, then you should continue to do it virtually. So we're really trying to approach this with some caution and saying we're going to open the office back up. We know we're going to set a limitation on the number of people that can be at the office at one point in time. We don't yet know what that number is. We'll make that decision on Monday. We also know that we're going to restrict having meetings here at the office. Again, we don't know to what extent, but here's what I would say. If you're planning on scheduling a closing that's going to have 6-7 people attending, don't plan on scheduling that here. And I would actually still ask that you really work pretty hard to do that as a, mail away, drive up, virtual, different site closing. So do I think the office could be a place where you could arrange for a mobile closer to meet your buyer, for the two of them to meet here? That might be something we could do in June. So we're going to know more about those numbers and we'll throw that out Monday. But at the very least, we know we're going to be able to open up for people to, be able to come here and get some work done, use the printer, etc. Yeah, doorman, good question. I think that's going to be a Michelle job duty for some period of time. So yeah, Rosie calls not it. I think that's going to be Michelle. Yeah, and whoever the first person is to not listen to Michelle is really going to regret it. I know. Yeah, well, and I didn't mention this. We're also going to ask that people wear masks here at the office. So, I mean, we've got some private office rooms. Like if you're in a private office, I think it's okay if you come into the office, you're wearing a mask, and then you would take that mask off if you're in a private room. So, I mean, it's going to be weird, and we don't exactly know how it's going to work for the month of June. I think our goal would be looking at July as being able to ease a lot of those restrictions. So, trying to think if there's other questions that we've had about the office. You could probably tell people like earnest money. You know, we've been telling people for earnest money deliveries. I think a lot of you have been mentioning like, yeah, our office isn't open. So, you know, plan on dropping earnest money off in the mailbox. That's probably still preferred. I think it's likely that if they come here during business hours, the office will be open. But again, trying to keep some of those rhythms where we're not requiring an interaction with someone coming into the office. Earnest money is not that big of a deal because they usually walk right in the front door and that's it. They drop it off, but trying to minimize that. I know we'll have more information coming out about the office on Monday afternoon. Questions about that? I could ask for opinions. I don't think I'm ready to ask for opinions at this point in time. You can put those in the chat. I'm kidding, mostly. Anything else on this phenomenon of escalating unemployment and rising prices, low inventory, low interest rates? Anything else on that we can clarify? I hope some of that's helpful perspective. I know for a lot of you, you already know this because you're in the middle of multiple offer situations. It's difficult to track that real time. I told my team yesterday, I think our brokerage has more multiple offer deals going right now than we've ever had. Like including spring of 16 and 17 and 18 when those got crazy. I really think we have more of them right now. I think a lot of you know that already. Well, thanks everybody for jumping into the call. Rex, you got anything to add before we go? Or Rosie?
Nope, I'm good.
Both start to say something at the same time.
All good.
Cool. Well, everybody have a great evening. Thanks, everybody.